Okay, you know and I know that I'm a teacher. I've just said I taught you at some point in your life, French to be specific. Is the teacher going to disappear? Is my former profession going to become obsolete because everything's on a...
I don't think we could ever reduce teaching down to a series of algorithms. One of the big, I guess, trends we're seeing in education is this model called the flipped classroom. So the basic dissemination of information, me sitting here and telling you these are the conditions necessary for fertilization, you don't need to be in the same room as me. You don't need to be sitting in front of me. I don't need to be holding your hand for you to know that. The flipped classroom is go home, do that bit, learn that bit, watch the videos, read the documents, interact with the content at home. And then the homework, come to school and do it, where I can watch you and where I can say and I can notice when you're learning, what you're interested in, what bores you, what time of the day you're most active or what time of the day you're most focused. And that's where a teacher,
in classrooms, in traditional classrooms in Kenya of 70, 60, 80 children per class, that the teacher is going to have that measure of, we're not talking about private schools here, we're not talking about, classrooms of 14 to 18.
Absolutely. I mean, right. Our average class size nationally is 45. Again, up in Northeastern, 63. One teacher managing 63 students. So if there's a kid who's got a hearing deficiency or a visual impairment sitting in the back of the class, tough luck. He's assumed to be probably stupid.
Right.
And so, I mean, in that, what I'm saying, that basic dissemination of information where a teacher stands conventionally at the front of the class, says things, the kids write them down, there isn't really that much interaction.
Right.
So we're shifting from doing that into doing group activities in the classroom, breaking those 45 students into groups of 10. Getting them to do things that are actually engaging them with the learning process.
So learning has become fun all of a sudden. You don't sort of say, there's Mr. Sibi Okumu, I must run out of the room because he's so boring.
When you're actually learning something, that is fun. It's not, it should be fun, it's a very empowering process. You're getting new information, you're empowering yourself to know more, to do more. Learning is a fun process.
May I draw you on the contents of this machine? There must be a certain technology. We're talking about people writing applications. Again, are you going to be the person who imposes what ought to be learnt? You are the new sort of big brother is watching you, and what's on the tablet is what ought to be learnt. Well, maybe culturally, I don't particularly want my child to be talking about or being taught about the menstrual cycle as in some sort of chapter on the tablet. Well, what can I do about it?
That's an issue of really curriculum. What Elimu does is we take the Kenyan curriculum for KCPE, the 6 core subjects in KCPE, and we load them onto the tablet, but rather than just loading them on as text and read this, we add animations and videos and games. But all of them are linked and tied to the Kenyan curriculum.
Right.
So the Kenyan curriculum, by the way, does need to be revamped.
Right.
It needs to be revamped desperately.
Okay. Yeah. I have, in my note here, I say, is there a tacit criticism on the educational policy that we have now? Because you're suggesting some kind of cure-all panacea. What do you find there is to criticize in our education policy at present? You know why? Because there are people in this office, who will say, I went to X primary schools, I did this, and now I am a video editor, I'm a film producer. What are you to tell me that I had a bad education and all I need is a tablet?
I think in terms of the trends we're seeing economically, they're not going as actually in the right direction, let alone as quickly in the right direction as we would like them to be. So we need to prepare ourselves. If we're saying Vision 2030, Elimu is a disciple of that. We said we're not going to wake up in 2031 and find ourselves in a developed country. There are active measures that we need to take. There are things that we need to arm ourselves with in order to be ready for that moment when we are living as a middle-income company. As a middle-income country.
Indeed.
Yeah. And so in order to do that, education is very core to that. One of the major, complaints you hear from employees is not, we need more engineers and so on. Yes, we do need those technical skills to grow, but we need people who can think outside the box, who can think critically and analyze a problem, not rote memorization, who can regurgitate facts, but who can analyze, understand, evaluate, and actually create things and create solutions That's very, very basic to our education system.
But I'm just, the subtext of my questioning is, throughout the ages, haven't there been teachers who've been able to create that kind of learning environment without the technology of which you speak now? So in other words, there's something to be said more about the teaching of teachers than, a bad workman or woman blames his tools. I can't teach because I don't have a laptop.
Well, there's like a three-pronged approach to an education problem. One is a teacher-centric approach. Get better, more motivating, more inspiring teachers, instructors,
and I dare
role
say
models.
better paid.
Better paid, whatever motivates them.
Right.
Get better instructors, role models in our classrooms. The second approach is build better schools. Give these kids a chair to sit on, for God's sakes, more inspiring learning environments. And the third approach, which is often ignored, is a learner-centric approach. Let's get those kids to say, wow, or I want to know more about that, or that's really interesting. How do we approach all three of them, but not ignore the other? And they're all equally important, I think.
Right. I'm going to mention the idea of equity, because you mentioned, here we are, I'm in Nairobi, there's a kid in Wajir, there's a kid in Mombasa, there's a kid in Busia, all these sort of disparate regions of the country, the devolved system, the county governments. As you see it on a sort of universal plane, is there going to be educational equity brought about by the measures which you suggest?
Well, I'll give you an example, John. The other day I was in one of the top national schools in Nairobi, and the biology teacher was explaining how a heart beats. And he had these props and he had bits and he was showing people, well, this happens when you block the right ventricle and this is how it affects the flow of oxygen and so on. And then you step into a place like Wajir, into Busia, where the kids are not even sitting in a room, let alone on a chair.
Well, I can say, let's personalize this. Where if you come to visit me in my quote-unquote ancestral village, I think I'm not letting the side down too much by saying people haven't seen a laptop or a tablet.
Well, let alone a
the students haven't.
Exactly.
At all.
So in terms of equity of education, those kids are being explained a concept like how a heart beats by a teacher who maybe barely passed their teacher training diploma.
Right.
So one, the expertise is not there, the infrastructure and the support and the environment is not as good. So when we're saying we're making it equitable, if you get a video and the kid in Nairobi watches it, a kid in Wajir watches it, you can rewind that video, you can press play, you can turn the volume up, you can press pause. That somehow levels the playing field, that at least that basic dissemination of information is equitable across the nation.
Right. Okay. So it's now been disseminated. Everybody's got the distribution across
just
the
like
land.
That.
Yes. But just like that. It's not so much the just like that. I'm still going back into this idea of, is this equity such that we are the curriculum itself will be uniform, so that I'm trying to get into this whole idea of we have private public schools. There's some people who have a sort of jump start. The sort of school that you went to, is that the school all Kenyans should aspire to go to?
I think we should always be aiming for better school systems, for better school environments and better teacher training. But in terms of making it more equitable, what's available to a student, I think a small disruption like better textbooks or more textbooks or devices that explain concepts, that helps level the playing field a little bit.
Right, so okay, well, time is running out on us. What would you expect of government? Should government go it alone?
I don't think government should ever go alone. I think most of the things that the government has done successfully in Kenya and moved us forward to where we are today as a hub and a shining example of economic, not prosperity, but moving in the right direction, has because of public-private partnerships. So when all our best textbooks, for example, in the market, guess what? They're not published by the government. They're published privately. And the same thing with the technology, the hardware itself. The government's not going to create laptops and manufacture laptops in Kenya. They're going to find a private partner to do that. And with the content in the laptops, in the tablets that they're disseminating, those also need to be opened up to the private sector. The private sector need to be told that create some digital content. You've got better animation studios, you've got better videographers, you've got better teachers than the public sector. So create something that the public sector, the public schools can really benefit from, something that's of global standards educationally.
Right. The last question in summary,
Yeah.
and you've got quite some time to give this because we have some time left. Where do we go from here?
Like I said, I think with any disruption, it's necessary. We learn from our mistakes. So let's take steps. Let's not be complacent in the way that things are. Let's take steps and do exciting things and do things that no one's ever tried before. Let's give these kids tablets and better teachers and laptops and better toilets and furniture. But the whole point is let's focus on the learning outcomes. Let's not say that technology, for the sake of technology, is a good idea. Let's focus on what the learning outcomes are. Are they going to perform better in their tests? Are they going to be better, more well-rounded citizens? Are they going to be smarter voters? Are they going to be more worldly? And most importantly, are they going to be better and active participants of the economies of tomorrow that they will be driving, let alone participating in? Let's really focus on the learners and see that we're giving them the right tools and the right armor to really face what's ahead.
Nivi Mukherjee, education technology specialist. Thank you so very much for coming on the JSO interview.
Thank you very much.